Look, it's a show about time travel. Anybody can come back. So, Doctor Who time again, and I want to try and be a little more positive with some of the things I've got going on lately. I've had to point out that I've seen in a negative mode lately, and I don't mean to be. It just, in general, it just seems like stuff keeps happening that I end up being disappointed by, frustrated by, angered by. So let me talk about some stuff that kind of makes me more happy to think about, which Doctor Who tends to do. Anyways, but specifically, I'm going to talk about this time some characters from Classic Who as yet have not made the transition to New Who, that I think should. That I think there is story potential, or in some cases, I just kind of want to see them again. So, there isn't a ton of rhyme or reason to this. It's a number of different characters. There's some villains, there's some supporting characters. Let's just get into this. And if you're thinking that 8 seems like an awkward number, why isn't it 10? Because I don't pad my lists. If I can't organically come up with 10, I'm not going to force 10. And you know what? I'm not putting the Ronnie on this list in an effort to pad it out. There's your spoiler warning. She's not on here. So anyways, let's start with number 8. The Draconians. Now, the Draconians are a race that appeared in the Frontier in Space only once. So this was third Doctor's era. It was actually the last Doctor Who story that Roger Delgado appeared in before his unfortunate death, or the last one he filmed at any rate. They might have actually aired them in a different order. I'm not going to bother checking that. In any case, the whole thing with the Draconians is, as far as their hook goes, is they are, well, they take their names from the phrase, draconian laws, meaning extremely strict, extremely tough. They are really all about honoring the law, the rules, and sticking really, really firmly to it. And I think that has the potential to make them an interesting complication or foil to a situation. I think it makes it harder to make them the outright villains. I mean, even in the story they appeared in, it was about them and Earth being manipulated into almost beginning to attack each other. So I don't think they work it as like a straight conquering villain, but I think their nature really makes them, and like honestly, you could use them as a less jokey version of the Jadoon in a way, in terms of like the enforcement of these laws that to possibly the companions don't even make any sense, and to the Doctor are just annoying. The Doctor's not big on rules that he himself did not come up with. So I think they are due to come back. I think their look is solid even for the time, and I think it would lend itself to being updated just a little bit, and it wouldn't take that much. Just refine the look a little bit. I think they could look really cool. And I mean, for crying out loud, their Emperor is the guy with the highest shoulder spikes. Yes, I want them back. Number 7, Fenric. Fenric is another villain, one-time appearance in Doctor Who. This was a 7th Doctor villain appearing in The Curse of Fenric. And how do I explain this guy? As quickly as I can do it. He is sort of an ancient being who was either around at the very start of the universe or possibly came from whatever universe existed before the one that we are currently existing in. He is an entity of pure evil. The Doctor has actually battled him numerous times. That's part of the story, even in the episode that he appears in, even though that's his only show appearance. And most of these that I'm going to talk about have shown up in audios and novels, etc. I am strictly talking about the show when I talk about all this. But in any case, the Doctor actually has more history with Fenric than we have actually seen. And Fenric's whole thing is the Doctor has to keep trapping him, because if this guy actually sort of has free reign, the damage he could do is almost incalculable in terms of his ability to just wreak destruction and manipulate things into the way that he wants them. And even in a weakened state, he's pretty darn good at that. So when we last left off with him, his body was destroyed, but he had taken over somebody's body. So he lacked corporeal form, but that doesn't mean that there was no way that he could ever come back. And I have no doubt there are many ways to do it. And my main thing here is, with him being being presented as such a massively powerful ancient evil, having him only have this one appearance feels like, we haven't gotten a proper scope of the threat of this guy. We should have had to deal with him more than once. And that's kind of why I want him to come back. And I guess in a way, I would almost want him to function as a substitute Beast from the Impossible Planet and the Saint, because I don't think the Beast should come back. Just because I think that story works the way it does, and I don't think bringing the Beast back is gonna bring a heck of a lot. But this is a character in a similar vein to the Beast, but who I think is much more viable to actually have return and just wreck shop. Number 6, the Guardians. There are 2 Guardians. There's the Black Guardian and the White Guardian, and it plays out basically exactly as you would think. One is on the side of good, the other is on the side of evil, and they have both either employed or attempted to manipulate, respectively, the Doctor into helping them achieve their goals, or stymie the other in the pursuit of their goals. So these guys are fairly abstract and fairly thinly sketched, and at least for my tastes, I would keep them that way. Unfortunately, we don't know enough right now about Jodie Whittaker's Doctor to know how she would react to someone like that. But like, in my head, if they had come back, say like during Capaldi's era, he would have fought tooth and nail to not get involved with these guys at all. But I could see one or the other or both in almost kind of a push-pull thing, either manipulating or forcing his hand to get him involved in their BS. Basically, these two forces, and theoretically either one of them could be a controlling power in the universe, but they're always just sort of going back and forth and focusing on making sure the other one doesn't get the upper hand. Or at least that's how I have chosen to read their relationship. They're like petty gods. And I think that there's some more story goodness to be gotten out of that premise, and I'd like to see them brought back and reinterpreted and see how another Doctor deals with them, because I've only ever seen the 4th Doctor dealing with them, and I'd kind of like to see somebody else take a crack at it. Number 5, Dorothy Gale McShane, otherwise known as Ace. This was the companion to the 7th Doctor. Not the only companion. He did have a few others early on in his run, but this is his definitive companion. She spent the most time with him. Their rapport was great, and in many ways, Ace was the test run for what we now think of as the modern companion. I think there were steps forward made with, or at least initially, with Sarah Jane Smith, but even she would frequently get written into screaming for help scenarios. And the writers kind of rebelled against the mandate to give the companion more agency at that point in time. But when they got around to Ace honestly is like Rose, 0.5. And I feel like, if nothing else, just to give proper recognition that she was the template by which the vast majority of modern companions seem to have been built from, I think she should be brought back for just that reason alone. But beyond that, Sophie Allred, I would love to see her interact with the Doctor now. Like with a female Doctor, I would be fascinated by that. Or even if it was later on down the line, I think you could really get something interesting. And I know we did the old companion coming forward and meeting a current Doctor with Sarah Jane Smith, and that went very well first of all. But second of all, that was also series 2. It's been a long time since we've done it. It's been long enough that I think we're allowed to give that another go and not have it feel like an excessive retread or gimmick, especially because Ace is such a different character from Sarah Jane. And I think that she needs the send-off that the show never properly gave her, because the show was put on its very long hiatus before any closure could be granted. Or in the show, a lot of what was going to be planned for her character has come out, and some of it has been appeared and co-opted and streamlined and put into various other mediums. But I would really I'd like to know where Ace ended up, truly, definitively. And I feel like doing that in the show is the place to do that. And I think Sophie Allred can still nail this character. I base that off of having heard an audio adventure that she appeared on. I mean, granted, that wasn't like super new, that was still from a while ago, but she can still do this part, and I would love to see more of Ace. Number 4, the Monk. Now, the Monk is, if you don't know this character, is a Time Lord, and he's introduced in a first Doctor story called The Meddling Monk. And what he does is exactly that. He just kind of messes around with time. I mean, think about... Yeah, he was kind of the first Time Lord that we encountered as far as being a problem that the Doctor had to deal with. But the thing was, he wasn't excessively malicious. He was possibly a little uncaring about the collateral damage of what he was doing, but he's not the master. He's not trying to take everything over. But his carelessness, I think, has some story possibilities. The story I always wanted to see with the Meddling Monk is for his messing around with stuff to finally catch up with him, and to have caused such a mess that is accumulated into either a string of paradoxes or screw-ups that he and the Doctor have to go on a buddy cop adventure to fix everything, and they're just squabbling the whole way, and the way that the Meddling Monk wants to fix things would only make them worse, and the Doctor has to rein him in. But every now and then, he would come up with a solution that was outside what the Doctor would think of, and it turns out to be the best solution. This would have to be at least a 2-parter. I would honestly say you could string a series out of this, effectively make the Meddling Monk the companion for a series. That might be a little bit too ambitious, but that's my dream scenario. But I do think you don't, even without going that big, I think there is fun to be had with this character, and that's the main thing. He is fun. Number 3, Sutek, or any other being from his race. I'll take it. This is the villain from Pyramid of Mars. Now, we may have to settle for somebody else. I mean, just go with whoever the inspiration for Set is. I mean, there are other Egyptian gods to pull influence from, but Sutek appears in Pyramids of Mars, and he is the villain of that, and is basically part of an alien race that it turns out the Egyptian pantheon is based on. And he is, again, very much kind of an embodiment of evil. The Pyramid of Mars is a very well-regarded classic Who episode. I haven't done a review on it yet, and I probably won't for a while, because it is one that I've already seen, and right now I'm kind of focusing my classic Who reviews on things that are completely new to me. But I'll get around to it eventually, I'm sure. But he is an intimidating villain. He's got a good, strong look. He has a strong presence, and especially if you get a Doctor that can play up the fear and the tension. And again, if you can't logistically figure out a way to have Sutek specifically come back, just somebody else from the bad end of that pantheon, I think would be a really cool nod. I think it'd be a really big pop for fans, and I think there's more to be done with this whole idea of the pyramids being linked to these aliens. I know that that's almost like a punchline now, the pyramids were built by aliens or whatnot, but the Doctor Who's already still treading on that with things like Pyramid at the End of the World. So, I mean, anyone who knows classic Doctor Who, how weird was it that the Osirans had nothing to do with that? Really, that was weird, right? Or is it just me? I don't know. We'll move on. Number 2, Romana Dvorla Triladar, otherwise known as Romana. Now, this is one you could go a couple of different ways on. She's been played by more than one actor already. Lalla Ward is still around. If you wanted to bring back that version of Romana, that is totally viable. If you wanted to bring in a new actress and say that she has regenerated from the last time we saw her, that would work too. I mean, that's basically what they did with Rassilon. So this was one that if I had done this list, I think even a couple of years ago, she wouldn't be on here. And that's not because I don't like Romana. I like Romana a lot. But I resisted for a really long time the idea of just bringing in more Time Lords. It's sort of the same issue that I have in Superman when they bring in more Kryptonians. I'll accept Superman, Supergirl, Zod, but like beyond that, any more than that, and you're just kind of devaluing what you have. They're not last survivors anymore, and they're not as special. And I felt that way about the Doctor and the Time Lords for a while, but at this point, we've already established that Gallifrey has been saved and is still out there, and there are other Time Lords. They don't seem to have gotten actively involved in the universe again, and I don't want them to, like, ever, but they are out there. So at this point, I don't have the same hang-up in terms of reintroducing a character like Romana into the series. And again, I think it would be best served as a as more sort of a nice note. I think it'd be nice to know where she ended up, where things were for her, or that the Doctor ends up consulting her because she knows and understands something better than he does, because that kind of thing did tend to happen. Or how cool would it be if the Doctor starts investigating something and then runs into Romana because she's already looking into it? I think that would just be great. And finally, number 1, Omega. This was a recurring villain from the classic era, originally appearing in the Three Doctors. He appeared again in Arc of Infinity, where he appeared to die, but again, he's kind of an antimatter creation in the first place, so you could say that after he died, the antimatter went back to the antimatter universe. I mean, there are ways to bring him back. There's always ways to bring them back. Now, his backstory is that he was actually one of the founders of Gallifreyan society. He was one of a handful of people, of Time Lords, who actually helped first develop time travel in the first place, but his sacrifice involved in that was to be trapped in the antimatter dimension, and he's bitter as hell about that, and at this point bitter against the Time Lords, and at this point he has more than enough reason to be bitter against the Doctor specifically. Now, I know there were a lot of plans to reveal that the Doctor was actually either was some new incarnation of quote unquote the other, like one of the other founding members of Gallifrey Society. I don't ever want to see that play out. I just want Omega to come back. I think he's got a fantastic look and he can be intimidating, and it's that nice mix of a large scale threat because of the damage that he can do just by his presence, because of his antimatter nature, paired with how personal his motivations can be. He just wants to exist in this universe again, but he doesn't care about the damage that'll happen from that. I think that is the combination for a great villain. I think there are more great stories for us to have with him that we haven't had yet. And I want to see how they update the look of that mask. So that's my list. 8 characters from Classic Era who have yet to appear in New Who that I think should make the jump. What are your thoughts on the ones I've named? What ones would you add to it? Yes, even the Ronnie, if you want to make a case, fine. But that'll do it for me, folks. So whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. There's all the stuff to do. You can support me on Patreon. You can like, you can subscribe, and follow me on Twitter, and listen to my podcast, la-di-da-di-da. Don't know why I said that. Links for all that stuff's down in the description. So until next time, this council is adjourned.